Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, October 27th, 2016. I'm Dan Rubin, coming to you from a pitch-black Gem City. Actually talking to Steve Wiltfong today from Cleveland, Ohio. Steve, there's only one reason to be in Cleveland, Ohio right now, and I don't mean the Cavs.
I'm fired up, too, Dan. Cubs got it done against Curlick's Indians yesterday. I didn't get a chance to text Bill after game 2. I did text him after game 1, so I'm not one of those fans that just text after the Cubs win. But obviously, getting out of the stadium, getting in your car, getting in your hotel room, I didn't get a chance to ask my man Bill about the game, but it was a big win for the Cubs. You don't want to go down 2-0, having to face Kluber 2 more times. So it was a good atmosphere. I actually thought the Indians ballpark could have done it better, man. They give you a little jank towel. I don't feel like they really bought into invested into the World Series atmosphere, the Indians franchise. The fans were into it, but I'm not sure the Indians franchise invested into it. Maybe other Bucknuts listeners have been to a World Series game and would say otherwise, but I just didn't think that they put much money into the fact that their team made the World Series.
Well, they probably didn't want to prepare too much because they thought they would jinx themselves, but we digress. Speaking of 2 powerhouses coming together, it looks like it's going to be a 2-team battle for arguably the best offensive lineman in Ohio. I said arguably, and that's Jackson Carman out of Fairfield. You went and visited Jackson recently, where he has visited Alabama. Now there's word that Alabama has made the move up. It does seem like Ohio State is still the favorite. There are some guys we wouldn't even talk about that there was this kind of stuff out there on them. But Jackson is that big of a recruit that we need to get a little report. What's your vibe on Jackson, and do you think Alabama really has a chance to come up and get him?
I try to call recruits after they take visits where I think that school is a realistic player. And Alabama's always got a puncher's chance with someone, but I didn't really reach out to Jack after that visit or really any visit because I really think he's going to Ohio State. He's going to enjoy the process. He's going to make the rounds. Certainly he's going to see great things at a place like Alabama, being inside Bryant-Denny Stadium for a big win against Texas A&M. That's going to be exciting and eye-opening for him to be in that kind of SEC environment. But Ohio State, I think, has a huge lead, and I haven't heard anything different to make me think that he's not going to be a Buckeye. But long way to go, and he plans on deciding after a senior season. So I guess just to kind of protect myself, I'll say that, sure, Alabama's always got an outside shot in the same fashion that Ohio State does, but Ohio State's tough to beat for Ohio kids and the Ohio kids that they want, and no one's recruiting him harder than the Buckeyes, and Coach Stud and Coach Meyer already make him feel like he's part of the family.
Yeah, that would fall into the category of shock for me. If anything would go poorly in that recruitment. Speaking of high-profile recruitments, 3 Texas stars: Marvin Wilson, defensive tackle; Browning, linebacker; Jeffrey Okudah, defensive back extraordinaire. They are all visiting Florida State this weekend. I'll take this in 2 parts. Should we make a big deal out of them visiting Florida State? And should we make a big deal out of them doing it together? Is it possible this is one of the best package deals of all time?
5-star offensive tackle Walker Little is also visiting Florida State this weekend. That's the top 4 ranked players in Texas, according to 24/7. Okudah's going to Ohio State, in my opinion. We've talked about it numerous times, the number 1 corner in America. I think Ohio State's distanced themselves from the pack. For the rest of those guys, Florida State was definitely a school that was high on Marvin's list in the summer. When I say high, top 1 or 2, based on the intel I was getting. But I think that they faded a little bit. So this is an opportunity for Florida State to remind Marvin why he loved them so much a couple months ago. Browning, I honestly could see Barron going anywhere. My crystal ball is UCLA. I think that he's got high interest in leading the state. So I'm not closing the door on any school for Barron. And then Walker's not even in the mix for Ohio State, so that covers it all. You know, I mean, Florida State's going to be a great atmosphere, and if they get a big win against Clemson, I guess you never know. It's certainly going to be exciting at Doak, and that coaching staff does as good a job as any when they got kids on campus of showing them an atmosphere that's advantageous to play in and play for. So we'll see. But right now, Jeffrey Okudah, I think it'd be something big will have to happen for him not to be a Buckeye.
It's amazing to think they're going to end this cycle possibly with Jeffrey Okudah and Sean Wade.
And Bubba Bolden, man. I mean,
you're talking about three pros in the secondary.
Yeah, Bubba Bolden, he's a guy that every time you watch him, he seems to be a better player than the last time you watched him. And he was terrific in the last Gorman game I watched. He was the best player on the field that night in a night where the field was stacked with big time guys. Sean Wade also falls in that mold. I think that when it's all said and done, Sean has a great chance of being a 5-star in 24/7 Sports. That may cause an eye roll from some Ohio State readers that he's not already. But we try not to, with the 5 stars especially. We finished with 32 of them at 24/7 Sports, but more than anything, we try not to take a star away if it's the 5th star. That's like, so we try to only give the 5 stars when we know for sure. And so I don't even know how many we have right now, but I think it's less than half of 32. So we're not trying to rush. There's a lot of guys out there that are probably 5 stars, but we don't want to rush in and say this guy's a 5-star and then watch him play as a senior and then take a star away. That would suck, you know. Take that 5th star away sucks. So, but yeah, Sean Wade, Jeffrey Okudah, those from a straight upside standpoint. I mean, Darnay Holmes is terrific, and I watched Sean Wade play last night, and then I turned on my Fox Go app and I watched Darnay Holmes play. My God, he's really, really good too. Two-way player that just dominates on both sides of the ball in California. Super quick, great feet, but he just doesn't have the same size, obviously, that Wade and Okudah bring to the table. So from an upside standpoint, you like those guys better, but that doesn't mean they are better. Darnay Holmes certainly still deserves to be in the conversation with those guys as being one of the elite corners in America.
If you can get 2 out of 3 and you were in the mix with the 3rd, I would say you've done your job recruiting. Speaking of doing your job, Ohio State, no doubt. I didn't.
Isaiah Pryor, Marcus Williamson.
Yeah, I know.
It was in the boat. I mean, Marcus Williamson going to be a fantastic nickel-type corner, a guy that can match up with those quick, fast slots and give them hell as a defender. And then Isaiah Pryor, so much versatility with him. He's a front of the line, hard-working leader-type guy that's going to make your football team better with just the pace he practices with and competes at. So safety, outside backer type for Isaiah Pryor, just that toughness that you need to be a physical player in the box and tackle guys like Corey Clement and Saquon Barkley and Justin Jackson. Isaiah Pryor is a guy that'll be up to that task in the Big Ten.
I mean, if you think about it, we're getting off on a bit of a digression here, as we are wont to do, but if you get Jeffrey Okudah, Sean Wade, Isaiah Pryor, and Bubba Bolden in one recruiting class, you could make a strong argument that the rest of the country combined doesn't have 4 better defensive backs in terms of fit. That's incredible. That your secondary recruiting for one school is a better team than the all-star team you could make from every other school combined.
No, I'm in agreement. Concur, my friend.
Speaking of recruiting, the Buckeyes will have a few recruits in this weekend as they host Northwestern. We've done the autopsy on Penn State, so I don't want to waste your time with that. What do you expect to see this weekend when the Chicago boys come calling?
Well, Northwestern's playing as well. This isn't the same Northwestern team that lost a couple games early to a good Western Michigan team and then one of the better FCS programs in America in Illinois State. That all of a sudden Northwestern's offense is playing better. Their quarterback, Clayton Thorson, seems to be finding himself. Clayton Thorson was a big-time talent upside guy coming out of high school. We had him ranked in the top 100 on 24/7 Sports. He chose to stay home over some prominent offers, as did their running back Justin Jackson. Those are two guys that could play at a place like Ohio State. They could play anywhere. I think Justin Jackson's, top 2 running back in the Big Ten right now with Saquon Barkley. He's a super tough, versatile player that can hurt you in a lot of ways. But Ohio State's going to be pissed off to him. And one thing we've seen from an Urban Meyer coached team at Ohio State, when they take a loss, they come back the next week and are really on their game. I mean, after they lost to Michigan State last year, they hammered the Wolverines. When they lost to Virginia Tech a couple of years ago with that young team, they didn't lose again. So, they ran the table after Virginia Tech. That was the title year, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I expect Ohio State to bounce back. I think Northwestern potentially could give Ohio State hell. But it was surprising to see Ohio State lose at Penn State, but that's why they play the games, right? And so, I expect Ohio State to bounce back and bounce back impressively against Northwestern and then, have another tough one with Nebraska the following week. We're going to learn a lot about Nebraska here when they play Wisconsin. Nebraska, when Tommy Armstrong's not turning the football over, they're really good. And when he turns it over, they're suspect. So if he can play a clean game against the Buckeyes, they'll have a shot. They'll have a shot this week against Wisconsin. Wisconsin lost one of their best defensive players for this ball game. So that's helpful for Nebraska. So they could come into the shoe, undefeated and coming off a big road win themselves. But I expect Ohio State to run the table the rest of the way going into the Michigan game. And, I still, even though Ohio State lost to Penn State, I still think that when Ohio State plays their best game, they're as good as anybody in America. And so, they just got beat by a Penn State team that got Kapinda and Bell back. And if those guys were playing earlier in the year, they'd be at least 6-1. They'd have beat Pitt. They couldn't stop the run against Pitt. They were playing walk-on linebackers against Pitt. And then, who knows? They were decimated when they went to Ann Arbor and got their ass kicked. So that wasn't the same football team that lost 2 games earlier in the year. In their offense, they hired a new offensive coordinator. They're starting to gel. They got playmakers. We talked about that on the show last week. Penn State's skill guys are as good as anybody's. Their running backs and receivers are really good. And, to beat Jerry and Conley for a one-on-one ball, that ain't easy to do. There's not many guys that are going to do that. 8 times out of 10 against another great player, Jerry and Conley's still going to win that one. But Penn State had an athlete that could go get the football against him, and they made a play. And their D-line played relentless against a young Ohio State offensive line that will continue to get better with Jamarco and Michael Jordan and Isaiah playing really that many snaps for the first time on the big stage, that often. So, you tip the cap to Penn State if you're Ohio State, and then you come back and you kick Northwestern's ass and you get back on track here. And from a talent perspective, you're good enough to make the playoff and win the whole thing.
I like where your head's at, Steve. Steve's going to roll over and get a little more shut-eye before he heads back to
I'm up, man. I'm fired up.
You're up for
another
good?
Great day. Oh, yeah, about to get on the road and drive the 4 hours and 45 minutes back to the Indianapolis suburbs. Excited about the Cubs. I may call Bill Kurelic here in a little bit and ask him if he thinks the Indians have a chance to bounce back in the friendly confines of Wrigley Field.
You'll have some time to make the call as you bisect the great state of Ohio. Have a great one.
Take care, guys. Thanks.